Hello, English learners. In today's video, we are going to dissect, we are going to break down another interview. This time, an interview with a famous American actor, Zac Efron. So, Zac Efron has been in many movies. He is most famous, most well known for his acting in High School Musical. In this interview, he will talk about his Netflix travel series and also his newest film. We will take a look at some of the language, some of the vocabulary used by Zac Efron and the person interviewing him, Jimmy Kimmel, and we will practice using them, learn their meanings and that sort of thing. So if that is something that interests you, keep watching. Now we will watch a clip from the interview of Zac Efron and then talk about some of the vocabulary used in that clip.
Please welcome Zac Efron. I know you've been traveling a lot lately because you have your Netflix travel show that you've been doing. And then this time you went to Australia and then COVID hit, right?
Yes, that's exactly what. So this time we showed up to Australia. We had a plan on doing sort of more international show. But COVID was in full swing, so we did the entire season in Australia. And
you did every nook and cranny of Australia.
We found them all.
And did you run into, because in Australia, like almost everything alive there will kill you. You know, they have like, you know, spiders the size of garbage can lids. And did you run into that?
No, I got pretty lucky in Australia. I did make a quick trip to Papua New Guinea for a couple weeks just to like hang out there. And
now where is that in relation to Australia?
It's on the same part of the globe, but it's really far away. So I lived with these local tribe. They were from the Sepik River, and they're kind of well known as the crocodile people.
Zac mentioned that COVID was in full swing.
We had a plan on doing sort of more international show, but COVID was in full swing.
I'm sure we all know what COVID is by now. It's something we've all lived through. So when he first got to Australia, the COVID pandemic was at its highest levels. It was at its worst levels. So therefore, to be in full swing means to be at the highest level of activity. So I could say the beach, like in this photo or video, is in full swing in the summer, but is slow in the winter, meaning in the summertime, there are many people, there's lots of activity going on, it is in full swing. Or we could say, by the time we arrived at the Christmas party, it was already in full swing. There was already many people celebrating, lots of activity.
You did every nook and cranny of Australia.
So Jimmy told Zac that he visited every nook and cranny. So basically everywhere in Australia. So the nooks and crannies are just the small spaces of a place or sometimes a thing. So we could say we searched every nook and cranny or every small space of the house, but we couldn't locate his keys. Now we will move on to the next clip, and again, kind of go over some of the vocabulary used in that clip.
Why are they called that?
Because they live in the Sepik River and they worship crocodiles.
They do, they worship the crocodile.
They do, it's their deity, their god. And so we went out to this river where they go fishing, and they invited me along for the trip. So I was like, yeah, sure, let's go. I'd love to check this out. This is gonna be wild. And a huge group of 40 or 50 dudes all got down in this swamp area and laid down and sort of starfished out like this below the water, like just their heads out. So they all kind of like laid out and what I realized after a couple minutes, were feeling around more or less with their hands for crocodiles. And eventually, these guys all just laid down in the river and they caught a crocodile. It was wild.
Zac mentioned he wanted to check out what the tribesmen were going to do when they went to the swamp.
They invited me along for the trip, so I was like, yeah, sure, let's go. I would love to check this out.
He wants to know more about what is possibly going to happen. So he used this phrasal verb to check out. So check out has a couple different meanings, but in this context, it means to get more information about or look at something more carefully. We could also use it and often do in the context of a doctor visit. So we can say, this doctor is checking out the man's ear. The doctor is wanting more information about it, looking into it, seeing what's wrong with it. Zac mentions there is a group of 40 or 50 dudes. Dudes, this is very common American slang, and it's almost always used to refer to a man. Sometimes used as an exclamation, like, wow. People might say, dude. It can be negative or positive as an exclamation, depending on how it's used. So I can say, dude, that's cool, or dude, that's not cool. Then Zac says that those 50 dudes all got down in this swamp area and laid down. Now, I didn't really want to get into this in this video, the difference between lay down and lie down, but it's obviously a slip up even native speakers make all the time, even myself. So to lay down, okay, and I'm using this all in the present tense. To lay down means to set something down gently. So I could say, I laid the cup on the table. He laid his head on my shoulder. Okay, so we're setting something down, the cup and my head, on something else gently. To lie down means to make your body become more horizontal, as if you are sleeping or taking a little nap. So I could say, I lie down on the couch after work. So that is lie down. And I'm going to stop right there because it gets a little more difficult in the past tense. And we're going to move on to the next clip. Action.
Did they know your work at all there? Like any of those guys seen High School Musical over there?
I think by the end of that trip, I kind of realized, like, I was out there camping. I didn't have a cell phone. Like, we were off the grid.
Oh.
I mean, in Papua New Guinea, there's no technology. We were sleeping in one of the just little huts that they sort of had for us, and that was me and like a lot of buddies. So we were all kind of like, we were roughing it for sure.
Right.
And by the end of the trip, which was 2 weeks out in Papua New Guinea, it was actually pretty funny. A couple of the guys came up to me with cell phones. These are the tribesmen guys, came up with cell phones, and we FaceTimed their cousins and their wives and people that were living in other places all over the world. They knew who I was the whole time.
What?
It was pretty wild. And then I realized, I was like, wow, okay, I've made it everywhere.
Now we're going to take a look at this phrase, off the grid.
We were off the grid.
Off the grid. While Zac was in Papua New Guinea, he was off the grid. He was in an area that didn't have running water, electricity, or just a common source for it. He mentions that Papua New Guinea has no technology. I'm sure he knows he misspoke. There is definitely technology in Papua New Guinea, and probably also public utilities. He just might have been in a place where there weren't those things. So to be off the grid means to be not using or depending on public common utilities. Zac mentions that him and his buddies were roughing it.
We were roughing it for sure.
Roughing it. And to rough it means to live without the usual comforts and conveniences that you have in your everyday life. So you might consider this man in the video to be roughing it according to the standards of modern living for the average person, let's say in the United States. This can also be a temporary state, roughing it. Okay, so perhaps as a college student, you were roughing it because you didn't have a job, you didn't have a lot of money, you couldn't have all the comforts you might have wanted, or all the comforts you had when maybe you were still living with your parents. So to make it can have different meanings, but in this context, to make it means to become successful. So Zac realized he made it everywhere when the tribesmen recognized that he was a famous movie star. So a lot of people associate success, the success that comes from being rich and powerful, with making it. But it doesn't always have to be something huge like that. You can make it in a large corporation or make it in curling, chess, as a writer. Okay, so you've made it if you've become successful in those fields. And we will watch our last clip and go over some of the vocabulary.
Is that blood coming out of your eyes?
That's blood. Yeah.
That's blood. Wow. Yeah. That's a Stephen King novel.
Yep. Yeah.
And
It's an adaptation from the original Stephen King, I guess, book, but then it's been made into a movie. Drew Barrymore was in it.
Right. She played the little girl in that movie. Yeah.
It's the brand new, our brand new retelling of it.
And it's great to see you, and congratulations on it's very interesting. Firestarter is in theaters and on Peacock simultaneously on Friday. In fact, you could, if you wanted to, you could bring your phone into the theater and watch it on both.
What a world.
Zac Efron, everybody. Thank you, Zac. We'll be back.
So, Zac's new movie is an adaptation of an original Stephen King novel. An adaptation is something that is changed into another form to fit a different purpose. So, in this case, the storyline of a book, okay, Stephen King's novel, was changed a little bit. Of course, a lot of it is still the same, but it was changed a little bit in order for it to be made into a movie. So this is common with books. Some books are adapted into films, or some books are adapted into plays. Many times in a sentence, in the middle of a sentence, the word to, the O in the word to, is pronounced like a schwa. It's great to see ya. I'd like to know. And we often, like Jimmy, pronounce you like ya. How are ya? I'm glad I found ya. Actually, in this case, we have coalescent assimilation. Okay, I know that's a big term, but I actually have a video on coalescent assimilation where you have a word that ends in a D sound, found, and a word that begins with a ya sound, ya. And when you have this combination of sounds, the D and the ya, it kind of coalesces into a j sound. I'm glad I found ya. Found ya. Also happens with the phrase could you, could ya. Could, instead of could you, it becomes could you. Anyway, you can check out that video on coalescent assimilation to understand that better. That is the end of our video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it was useful. If it was, make sure to give me a like. Subscribe to this channel if you enjoy English vocabulary lessons like this with interviews. Feel free to ask any questions you have in the comment section. And until next time, English learners.